Okay, you got to get me reset. So I assume don't go. You have to tell it to go live, right?
Yeah.
Okay, don't go live until you tell me. So I assume I will not see the camera or see the computer.
No, I think I have to get most of the stuff done.
It's fine.
I might be able to switch it around.
I'll make it work.
So you're there. Click on it real quick. Here you go. That's where you stop quickly for a second.
Okay. Darn.
Webinar queue. Okay, ready?
Yep. Get me reset though. Tell me when.
I'm not going to screen share yet. You're going to be without screen share.
Okay. Okay. Tell me when to go. Good evening. Hi, my name is Douglas Hagren, and welcome tonight to learn about all the fantastic ways that you can save money. Okay. Good evening. Why don't you give me the clue when I'm ready?
It's
okay.
It started yet. I'm ready for that.
Okay. Just tell me.
Okay.
Good evening. I'm Douglas Hagren with Pro College Planners, and I want to welcome you tonight to learning about all the fantastic ways that you can save thousands of dollars off of the cost of college. I know that's why you're all here. I know that this is a incredibly important topic for everybody who has children of any age, especially those of you that have children in high school who are staring at this incredible expense. And we're going to talk about some incredible ways that we can make it easier tonight. So I want to welcome you for joining us. And right now, just want to let you know where we're at. We're actually broadcasting from the Houston area, from Lone Star College, Montgomery. Just a community college here. It's got some excellent options for about 9,200 students enrolled in areas of biotechnology, physical therapy assistance, human services and land survey development are a couple of the areas that they specialize in. So we really appreciate them and all of you who are joining us tonight to allowing us to host live from this location. So welcome. Now, who are we? We are Pro College Planners. We're located main campus in Richardson, Texas, but we've got individuals all over the country who are helping families to navigate this incredibly complex process of figuring out how to get the discounts on college and pay for college. And so tonight we're going to go fast. We're going to be getting through a lot of information in a short period of time. There will be a video replay for those of you. So if you missed some things, don't worry, there's going to be some more information or ways to get this later. And of course, ways to get questions answered and also to follow up and maybe get some time to talk about your own situation with one of our specialists, or where you can get some questions answered to your own specific situation, because everybody's situation is different. And of course, not all of these situations are going to be able to be answered in a forum like tonight. All right, so again, this is our information. It's a great time to get a screenshot too, just to have our information if you want to follow up with us later. Now we are live, so sometimes we'll have some technical difficulties. We're trying to get this to advance forward here and give us a moment. But while I'm talking to you, just to give you an idea of where we started, we were specializing with families in the retirement space, and we've been working at this for 20 years, my partner and my team. And what we found is that a lot of the information that was out there was just wrong. A lot of bad advice, a lot of individuals who are getting investment advice weren't necessarily getting a lot of help in terms of how to navigate what was obviously a major obstacle between their current situation and their own retirement. And when we found working with this was a concern that a lot of families had, but they were not getting this answered in the work that they did. So again, let's talk about what we're going to go through tonight. We're going to show you 6 key ways that you can cut the cost of college. And let's ask a question. If you're out there, you're probably stressed about the incredibly high cost of college. You've probably seen the statistics about how much that cost of college has been going up over the years. Probably if you went to college, looking at what it cost when you went to today, you know firsthand how expensive it's gotten. But ultimately, we know that the reason that you're here learning about this is that you want your children to go to college. There's an incredible value to a good education. There's some great books out there that talk about the direct correlation between a college degree and what that can lead to in financial success in your child's future and their well-being. You can see in surveys that have been conducted year after year, over 80% consistently say that college is an investment in their child's future. So we know that this is incredibly important to you, and you know how important it can be to your child's well-being and future success. But even if you're feeling stressed, we want you to know that there are ways to cut that stress and feel better about this process, and that's what we're going to help you with tonight. Now, what are we going to cover tonight? We're definitely going to cover the problem that you feel about the cost of college. We're going to cover how to reduce that cost of college, the perceived problem that people feel is the biggest problem they're facing. But we will also be talking, it says on here that we're not going to cover it, but we're going to cover it a little bit, how to pay for college. And actually, even if you do it correctly, you structure it so that you could potentially get a full refund on the cost of college that you have to pay to put your children through school. And so we're going to get into what is actually the real problem, costing people more money when it comes to college, and how to resolve that as well. Now, when it comes to planning for college, there's about 12 key areas that have to be considered. That's a lot. There's a lot to this. And again, there's help out there. So the student has got to understand their college options. They've got to understand how to prepare for those incredibly confusing and complex college applications. They've got to gain self-awareness. For example, social media, something we didn't have to deal with when we were younger. Help them to clean that up now. Colleges are looking and they're making judgment case calls on what students are putting out there on their social media. If they're getting involved in some of these TikTok challenges, it's a good time to have a family conversation. And they've got to get in the right mindset, because this is an amazing transition they're going to be going through over the next 4+ years. Now, the parents, it's important that you start understanding what your expected family contribution is. We're going to get into that. Applying for financial aid, again, to determine how much these schools are going to want you to pay. We'll talk about that as well. Assessing your retirement readiness. If you don't know where you are in retirement readiness, how are you going to take valuable resources and put them towards college that you'll never get back again? That's part of the planning we'll get into, because you've got to calculate the cash flow it's going to cost you for college and your ability to afford it. Now, as a family, you're going to see that you need to work together to select the right colleges, assess scholarship options, compare awards that are out there, and ultimately transition successfully, which is not just financially, but also psychologically, to these next coming years. Now, who is this for? Well, it's for families with plenty of money, who have saved well, who have the cash flow to be able to pay whatever college will cost. But they want to keep as much as they can and ensure their child will end up in a great college. You know, it's also going to be for parents of high school families, students who may not have saved enough. But ultimately, it's going to be for parents with younger kids. It's going to be for parents with children already in college. It's going to be parents of students who may have graduated that have loans. In fact, the reality is, information we're going to talk about tonight is going to be valuable for pretty much anybody. Now, let's back up a second and talk about some of the statistics. It's incredible the amount of college cost that it takes to pay to put one child through school today. The average cost of college is almost $36,000 per year, and that has tripled in 20 years. So if you feel like it's gotten expensive, you're right. The annual growth rate at 5.8% is well above what has been the average inflation for all other expenses. Actually, we'll talk about how those expenses and what's really gone up versus a lot of things that have actually gone down. The average in-state student spends almost $26,000 a year, not cheap for a public institution, and the average private student is paying almost $55,000. Now, I want to come back for a second and take a look at the bottom line here. This comes from debtclock.org. Fascinating and a little bit scary. Go look it up. but you can see here that student loan debt, as of the time I grabbed this, which was about a month ago, was almost $1.8 trillion outstanding, 40,000 per student, and that exceeds what's out there currently in credit card debt. So this is a very serious issue. And in fact, in neighborhoods where families have put more kids through college, there has been a higher rate of foreclosure in the following years, and more families over the age of 60 are now carrying student loan debt because of co-pays or their own debt. So again, we are very aware of the issues that you are seeing and the concerns that you have. As I said, lots of cost that can go into just putting a child through 4 or 5 years. And you'll note here that I said on in-state and out-of-state, it's going to be 25, 45, and about 54 if you get to private. But notice that we said over 5 years, and that may be a pause. Maybe that was a typo. It's not a typo. The reality is that in public school, the average student is going to go more than 4 years. In fact, the average across the country is 6.2 years to graduate, and less than 40% of kids in public institutions are graduating on time. Again, that's important if you're going to be going into this trying to budget for the ability to pay. As a matter of fact, you can see here that these numbers are after the average family is getting discounts. That's not the average that you could have. It's the average across the board because unfortunately, most people don't know where to look and they're not getting the scholarships they deserve. But again, with proper planning, you can do much better than this and actually put your child through college at a great school that fits academically, financially, and socially, and still have the wealth you need to secure your own successful future. Okay, what do? I talked about it a little bit before. We started in the financial services business, but we have a unique approach to how we look at financial services. Most people look at it from an investments and savings perspective exclusively. We look at it at finding where you are unknowingly or unnecessarily losing money to inefficiencies. And the areas that you are key areas where inefficiencies happen, where people lose more money than they should: mortgages, taxes, qualified plans, and major capital purchases, which of course does include college. We've been doing this a long time. We've helped thousands of families through this process. We've discovered that there are ways that people need to put things together in a process in order to get the cost down and pay for college that unfortunately most of the time are not being presented through the things you hear out there or the advisors that you're working with. If the only suggestion to pay for college is to save into 529, that's not college planning. But we also understand every family is different, which is why it's important to understand your unique situation. This is me. This is Brad Satin. He's from Fox Philadelphia. He used to be Fox Minneapolis. Some of you may recognize him. Again, this is me being interviewed. Here's some articles my partner Craig was quoted in. Again, just showing our conversations we've had out there for a long time on topics just like this. Okay, on what we're going to talk about tonight: how to cut the cost off the full price of a school, but also the basic principles on how to finance the rest. And finance, the definition of it, is not what most people think. So getting into the key areas, those 6 areas, we're going to talk about, you can see them right here on screen, and I'm going to go through them one by one, starting with the first area of cutting cost: how to understand the realities of college pricing. Here's the thing. I flew this morning down to Houston. Actually, I flew to Dallas, and I got on the plane, and it was amazing. This morning, I was able to get a first-class ticket for less than $100. Unbelievable. I mean, imagine that before everything hit with COVID, how much it would cost to get a first-class ticket. Now, I've been upgraded before. I've been able to upgrade last minute for a little add-on price, but my first original ticket was usually $200 or so. And now I'm getting a first-class ticket for under $100 because the economics of the situation have changed. Ultimately, I could have gotten a ticket for $40, unheard of. But here's the thing. I don't know what the next person paid. I don't know what anybody in the back did, but we do know this. Everybody pays a different price on an airline. And that can be an advantage because it might give you a first-class seat, or it might give you more legroom, or it might get you at least away from the stink of the bathroom. But college is exactly the same. Everybody's paying a different price, but there is no reason to pay more for college. It doesn't guarantee you anything. It doesn't guarantee you a smaller class size. It doesn't guarantee you more time with the professors. It doesn't guarantee you any benefit. Make this clear. Paying more for college does not ensure a more secure outcome or better well-being for your child. And just like airline pricing, everybody's paying different. It's important that you get the lowest price you can. Again, I said I'd talk about the prices that have happened, and you can see here that we've had a massive difference between different areas where we spend money and what has happened over the years when it comes to inflation. Down here at the bottom, TVs. Look at what you can get for a TV today compared to when we were young. We can see things like cell phone service. That's gotten cheaper. Software, toys gotten cheaper. These are the things we want. These are nice, but they're not what we necessarily need. If you take a look at things you need, like foods, beverage, healthcare, childcare, and of course, college tuition and textbooks, they have all blown up in cost significantly. So that's why you're feeling like cash flow is just tighter than you ever expected it to be. Now, when it comes to college, certain people are going to get money and certain people aren't. So what matters is how your child is going to rank and how they're going to apply against the student body entering college. If they're in the bottom 25% of the incoming class to a college, you can be sure that you're going to at least pay full price if you can afford it. But if you cannot afford that cost of that college, you're probably not even getting into the school. And that is also the case for the bottom third. In the top 25% and the second 25%, you can see that anybody in those situations is most likely going to get grants or scholarships. And of course, if you can afford the most, you're definitely going to get the ability to get merit scholarships. And we're going to talk about those a little more as we go here, but it is important to understand that this is a critical thing to know. Where does your child rank when it comes to the incoming student body of the school? If they're middle 50% or below, this is not necessarily from a financial standpoint the colleges you should be looking at if you want to keep more of your money and not pay full price. But the good news is almost every college is in fact on sale, something that the media would not like you to know as they sell advertising and clicks to get you to hear how expensive college is. The reality is college is a buyer's market. 58% of kids at public universities do not pay full price, and a whopping 88% of students at private universities receive some sort of a break as well. Why are they doing this? They're doing it for competitive reasons because they need to get students into their schools. It may seem like there's a line of students out the door. The fact is there has actually been a decrease in the number of students applying to college over the years, and colleges need to keep those numbers up. That translates to discounts. What does a discount mean? Well, if across the board, the average discount is at a historic high of 56%. And what does that mean? It means that do not pick schools based on the posted price tag that you see. Again, I repeat myself, don't pick schools based on the posted price tag you see. A lot of people do that. They're going to pick cheaper schools. Well, cheaper is not the price they post. It's what the net real price is after discounts. So make sure you understand what those discounts are going to be to get the real price. A $45,000 school may only cost $19,000 if it gives generous discounts. So now knowing that it is a buyer's market, you need to know how to be a savvy shopper. Again, why is it a buyer's market? Because the reality is although there are the schools that people hear about, the prestigious schools, by the way, Latin root of prestige is to deceive. They have done a very good job of showing you or telling you they're great. In fact, the results don't necessarily work out to be that way. But 98% of colleges out there, they actually have to work to get enough students to fill their quota. 98% of admissions directors are concerned. And because of that, those schools, not necessarily the schools that everybody knows, because 85% do end up applying the same 50, but 98% of admissions directors out there actually are concerned about filling quota. And in order to do that, they will give discounts. So number two, what is the second cost-cutting idea? Well, it's how do you qualify for financial aid, and what schools you target will absolutely depend on that answer. Going back to the slide about how you get merit and grants based off of where those kids are ranked. So By the way, I want to go back to what I said before. With that many discounts, know that it is not just A students getting discounts. In fact, virtually everybody is. You've just got to get to the right school. All right, so the first thing you have to do before doing any of this is you've got to get your expected family contribution. I talked about that before. What is that? Well, there's actually two main formulas. It is what schools think that you can afford to pay before they will step up and give you any help based on your financial situation. The main one is called FAFSA. Many of you have heard of this. It's the free application for federal student aid. And the second one is called the CSS profile. And these, we're going to talk a little bit more about what these mean. But this number, this expected family contribution, is what is going to be determined about how they're going to apply their money for you financially. So if we were to take a family that makes about $55,000 income, and you can see here has 2 children, 1 entering college, and some assets, you can see that the computation between FAFSA and the profile going to be very similar at the end. They're going to have an EFC of about $2,500. Now, a family that makes considerably more on income and has more assets with the same demographics of 2 students, you're going to see that you're going to have a little bit of a difference between those because they count different things. And a family with an EFC of this high is definitely going to have a harder time getting need-based aid from colleges. They're going to want to look at colleges that offer generous merit aid. Now, interestingly enough, at least for right now, if you have 2 children in college, you might feel intimidated that you're going to be paying more for tuition for 2 kids. Right now, the current process actually cuts the EFC by 50% when 2 kids are in college at a FAFSA school and 40% at a profile school. So going back, that family that had a $30,000, $35,000 EFC is going to end up having an EFC of only about $20,000 with 2 kids in school. That's going to mean a family that didn't qualify with 2 kids in school might actually qualify for financial aid. And you can see that what this means is if your EFC is higher than the posted price of school, there's going to be no financial aid based on need. But in the second example, you can see this EFC is lower than the posted price, and that gives a demonstrated need of $23,000. Now, a family with an EFC this high still probably going to want to look at schools that give generous merit aid, because to come out of pocket $35,000 for a school still isn't going to be easy for most families. So how to summarize: if you have a small EFC, you're going to probably want to look at in-state schools and schools that offer generous need-based aid and merit aid. And if you have a larger EFC, you're going to also want to maybe look at your less cost in-state public schools, but also look at schools that offer generous merit aid based on academic achievement, not necessarily based on your financial situation. Number 3, let's talk about it. Use of net price calculators. Kind of touched on that on the last section, because a net price calculator is ultimately going to tell you what the true price of the college is going to be. What does that mean? I mentioned don't look at schools and say, well, these schools are cheaper, that's all we're going to look at. That tuition price, the price tag, is not the price you're going to pay. Net price calculators are a way to determine what the actual out-of-pocket is going to be after assuming scholarships and grants that are the free money that's going to be provided by the school. And since many of the more expensive schools can often offer very generous merit aid, you may be surprised to find that some schools you may have avoided based on the price tag may actually have ended up being cheaper than the schools that had a lower price tag. So it's important to use these calculators. You can actually Google the school and type in net price calculator to find this information. Now, you got to do some detective work because they're often buried on the school's websites and hard to find. You also have to be very careful, because even though there's a law that all schools must offer these, some schools do the bare minimum, and use calculators that are not very accurate. They use the federal template. So with a good net price calculator, it is going to need you to get your tax returns to get some really detailed information off the tax return. It's going to ask a lot of questions. Basic rule of thumb: if it's not asking for your tax returns, it's asking generic questions, it's very quick, it's probably the federal calculator. Also, if it does not calculate the merit aid, it's most likely the federal calculator. So if you're seeing those calculators, these are most likely going to mislead you. So because this is going to be tricky, this is an area our firm helps families with, is to figure out what the true cost is, to find what the prices they're going to pay, what schools they can afford after the application of merit scholarships, basically using net price calculators to help you build that budget. Number 4, let's talk about the main sources of college money. Where is it coming from? Well, there's essentially 4 main areas that money is given to families. And as you can see here, 2 of them are almost the same. There's the federal and the colleges themselves. The number 1 is the federal, but then lagging significantly behind, you're going to see that there is private scholarships, which a lot of people do a lot of work to get, but you can see there isn't that much out there, and ultimately the states themselves. So the federal government, the biggest lender or the biggest provider of aid overall, is going to be the federal government, but it's mainly going to be in what's called the Pell Grant program. The Pell Grant program is mostly available to those of need, although there are some exceptions of people that we've worked with out there that have gotten it. Most people have the receipt of a Pell Grant with a family income, AGI, of under $25,000. And the most you're going to get is currently is $6,095 a year in the first year. So again, it's not a lot of money. If you need a lot of help from a financial basis, and you do qualify for Pell Grant, that's excellent, but you're still going to want to be looking for schools that are going to be affordable to your budget. Now, note this, by the way, that on the federal government side of things, they can still get loans even if you don't qualify for the grants, because loans are provided by the federal government regardless of income. States, now let's talk a little bit about states. States are actually one of the lowest sources of money, and they're also one of the areas of money that run out the most. So if you're going to try to get money from states, you definitely want to make sure you're filing FAFSA earlier, because they do run out quickly. Here's the thing to know about. There's not a lot of money available from states. In the north, you're going to find that the money that is available from states, like the federal program, is going to be tied to those with financial need and that are going to have to demonstrate financial need, where for some reason in the South, they tend to be more more given out based off of merit. So higher academic achieving students will more likely qualify for state grants in the South. Private scholarships, I mentioned this. A lot of people put a tremendous amount of work to get very little in private scholarships, and there's nothing wrong with that. Any money you can get is helpful, but you have to understand the amount of time that's going in and the benefit of that time. So let's talk about private scholarships for a second. First of all, there is an immense number of scholarships that are out there that you can search on the internet and look for, but the competition to win these is incredibly intense. As a matter of fact, the Coca-Cola scholarship actually is 25 times harder to win than getting into Stanford. So once again, I talk about the time it takes, and the investment of that time may not be worth it with all the work there is, but there is a way you can better your chances. First of all, make sure you look at local scholarships. They could be available through the library, through schools, they could be through local companies, etc. These tend to have less applicants because they're not on the major databases. Also, if your scholarship is looking for an essay, that could improve your chances as well, because students don't like to do essays. So if your child is willing to do an essay, I've seen situations where they may be the only applicant, and obviously that's an easy way to win. So again, looking locally is a great place to look. But here's a catch-22 on scholarships. When it comes to money that is provided from colleges based on need, colleges look at everything that you have as a source of income, whether it's taxable or not. And unfortunately, scholarships, private scholarships, are considered to be a source of cash flow that colleges will look at. So if you are qualifying for need-based aid from a college, be very careful before applying to private scholarships. Check with your school if it's going to impact you, because unfortunately, those that need it the most may find that they get less aid from the school once they win the scholarships. Now, ironically, those that don't need the money the most, the ones that don't qualify for need but qualify for aid based on merit, can go ahead and apply for these without any impact whatsoever. So it's unfortunate and it's not fair, but be very careful when you apply for private scholarships if you're getting a need-based scholarship from a college. And you can see one other area, a great place to look for scholarships is CAPEX.com, C-A-P-P-E-X. You can see that they do a lot of scholarships based on vocation. for a lot of different achievements, institutional scholarships. Again, take a look out there, especially in areas of arts and other talents. There are some incredible scholarships. You can see the Eagle Scout Scholarship here, National Merit, incredible scholarships that you may automatically win just by achieving the metrics. So they're not necessarily competitive. A lot of those scholarships are automatic scholarships based on achievement. So definitely check out capex.com. All right, institutional merit and financial aid. Here's something to also be aware of. There are very few schools that provide 100% demonstrated need-based aid. What does that mean? Again, go back to the EFC. If the tuition cost, the price tag is higher than the EFC, whatever that gap is called demonstrated need. Now, every school gives a different amount. Some schools will give very little of that, maybe even 40%, and half that'll be in loans. That's not very helpful. There are schools that will give 100% of that, almost, or 90% of that as free money. But those schools only compute to about 6 dozen schools across the entire country. Okay, so when you take a look at that, you can see a lot of those schools do fall into the most prestigious schools that are out there, a lot of your Ivy Leagues, a lot of your very competitive schools. So they're incredibly hard to get into. Okay, so again, if you can get into one of those schools and you qualify for need-based aid, consider yourself hitting the college lottery, because they are very, very difficult to get in at all. However, if you can qualify, if you don't qualify for need-based aid at those schools and you can afford to pay, you will probably pay full price, because these schools do not offer much merit aid, if any, to incoming classes based off, and students based off academic achievement, because they just have so many families willing to pay full price. The best thing that you can do is to cast a wider net. If you really want to look for discounts and look for schools that are going to provide generous aid, get outside the box. As I said, 85% of families apply to the same 50 schools in the country. You probably are too. Don't just look at those masters or those research colleges. They tend to actually have some of the worst discounts you can get. And ironically, they provide some of the worst support, because the professors at research universities actually are primarily paid to sell research and to teach graduate students. So incredible places to go for graduate school. But unfortunately, this is why they have teaching assistants. They're actually discouraged from spending time with your undergraduate students. So if you're looking for more discounts and looking for more support, you may be better casting a wider net, looking at many of the colleges and master's level programs out there that don't have graduate programs that are actually in place to teach undergraduates. But a lot of these schools tend to not be on the readily available lists that most people look after. Athletic scholarships, we're getting a lot of questions about that. Well, what about my child? They're great at sports, and I think we're going to get something. Well, so you can see here, it is one of the lowest sources of money available for college. Matter of fact, everybody knows football. There's 1 million players playing college football right now in Division I, and you can see that only 10,700 have scholarships. That's 2.4%. Women's track also has a lot of competitors, 600,000, but only 1.7 receive a scholarship. And these schools, unfortunately, these schools, unfortunately, are the path to get into college and get an athletic scholarship is very, very low. As a matter of fact, though, do know that it does help get into college. It just may not get scholarships. As you can see here, jocks have 40% greater chance of admission at an Ivy League. So if you do have a really smart, high academic achieving child and they do play sports, it can certainly help with entry. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to help with the ability to get aid. And really, there's only a few sports that are going to provide very good aid anyway. You can see them listed here. These are called headcount sports. The way this works is, if you do get that scholarship, it's 100% fully paid for, or nothing at all. That is only going to apply to about 6 different sports that are out there, as you can see. All the other sports are considered equivalency sports. Those sports will give a lesser amount of scholarship, but unfortunately, again, very little, if any, money, especially in relation to the cost of the school. So don't be necessarily relying on an athletic scholarship to be able to cover significant costs of college. Let's go to number 5. Number 5 is researching the generosity of colleges. You need to know what they're going to even be providing. What is the institutional money that's available? You can actually go to College Board, or we can help with this as well, and type in the information of the school. And you can see here, Yale, great school, incredible amount of need. They're one of those 100 need-based schools. But notice they don't give any notation of merit money whatsoever. They just don't give it. So again, if you can pay and afford it, you're going to. But if you can't afford it and you have a high achieving academic child, hit the lottery. Now, if you take a look at a terrible school for need and for merit-based, it's going to be NYU. A lot of families have gotten in financial trouble with NYU because they just don't give much in terms of need if you can't afford it, and they give very little in terms of merit either. So if you're going to go to NYU, most people are going to pay close to full price. Now, here's an example of casting a wider net. Hendrix College is in Arkansas. Most kids are not sitting there waking up thinking, hey, I want to go to school in Arkansas, but it's a fantastic school. And because it's not as well known, it gives an average merit scholarship of about $28,000. That's a discount to almost every family that comes through, and they give incredibly generous need-based aid. So there's a tremendous number of schools out there that are great pipelines for graduate school or careers that you may not have heard of, that if you do the research are also going to potentially be incredibly generous to you in terms of discounts and scholarships. Make sure you're casting that wider net. Number 6, the last one in cost cutting, is going to be checking those four-year graduation rates. I talked about this at the beginning. It's actually really surprising to people how poor the four-year graduation rate really is. And by the way, one thing we talk about a lot of times with families is how unreliable these major ranking sites are, like U.S. News and World Reports. They use a lot of information that just doesn't matter to rank. A lot of great schools don't end up on the list. But one of the very misleading things that they use when their graduation rates is actually 6-year graduation rates instead of the 4 that people want. What does that mean? Well, if you take a look at an excellent graduation rate, you can see Princeton University. They would tell you it's almost a 97% graduation rate. The reality is in 4 years, it's only 88%, which is still very good, especially if you compare this to a school like San Diego State, where they may brag that they've got a 66% graduation rate, but that's their 6-year rate. In 4 years, they're only graduating less than 33%. So it's incredibly important to know this. If you're planning on budgeting for 4 years and your child ends up for 5 or 6, those 2 years extra could actually cost you more than the first 4 combined, because scholarships often only are good for the first 4. So these graduation rates are critical. You can see that a lot of the schools that have greater graduation rates are going to be a lot of your private schools and your elite schools. A lot of your public schools, as I mentioned before, you need to be planning or thinking about 5 or 6 years when you're doing your budgeting, just in case, because of how common that is. Now, let's take a step back again and just talk about the importance. It is an opportunity right now. If you don't know your EFC, again, it is critical that you start this as early as freshman year to find out this before the government tells you what it is. It's going to allow you to plan. It's going to allow you to budget. This is an area we can help. We do a lot of EFC calculations for families because it can be very tricky. The FAFSA has a lot of questions that if you don't understand what they're asking, a lot of families put the wrong information in. I've seen families miss 2 questions on the entire FAFSA, and it ended up costing them $10,000 a year, almost $50,000 over 5 years of aid. So this is an incredibly important thing for you to learn as quickly as possible. Now, also help a lot of families, and offer this to anybody who's joining us, to get their net price calculator. Again, as I mentioned, they're tricky to find. They're hard to find on these websites. We can help you with understanding what the true price is going to be, what scholarships could be available to those colleges, especially after helping you determine your EFC. When we put these things together, we can really begin to build a reliable budget. Now, the thing about net price calculators is they're more reliable when you start to get to junior year or senior year, because they do take into consideration academic credentials such as grade point average or test scores, which obviously aren't going to be as available in freshman or sophomore year for many families. It's good to start looking at these things earlier, but again, revisit them and have the help to do so that by the time you start making those college selections, you have really valuable data that can help you with the budgeting and the selection process to pick those schools academically, financially, and socially. Now, I went really fast on those 6 key areas. I'm going to transition now because what we were talking about is this entire iceberg that people are coming at directly. Think of the Titanic. Interestingly enough, it wasn't the iceberg the Titanic saw that sunk the Titanic. It was actually the iceberg under the water. Most icebergs are actually smaller in what you see, and this is the reality with college. Because above the water, you're worried about the thing you can see, the scholarships, the grants, the discounts. All of those things are incredibly important. This is the airline pricing. You deserve to get your fair share and pay the lowest price you can because there's no benefit to paying more. The reality is that's the perceived problem. The real problem is most people are also paying for college wrong. And the part of the Titanic, the part of that iceberg that's going to take you down is the part that you can't see, how you finance and how you pay for college. So we're going to talk about the real problem here. Why are we concerned about that? It's actually got us really upset. The government did a lot of things to exacerbate this problem, okay? They gave cheap, low interest rates, caused cheap and easy money. 10 years ago, they took over, instead of backing loans, 10 years ago, they decided to start doing the direct lending themselves. That allowed the colleges to think, hey, anybody can get a loan, we can charge whatever we want, and it became a college cash grab. And the college administrators and everybody got richer. But the reality is income was stagnant. We pay for more things than we used to. There's inflation has absolutely gone up more than you've been able to pay, and that's led to the debt. You need to have a plan to finance and pay for college if you're going to secure your future. So what is financing? I said the definition that you're thinking of probably isn't the definition of financing that really is. And what I mean is financing is to purchase anything. Most people think it's borrowing money and ultimately having to pay interest. And that is half true. You finance everything you buy, whatever you buy. You can either borrow and pay interest, but there's another side of this. You can also pay cash, avoid paying any interest, but lose any interest your money could have accrued. And that is what we call compounding interest. And this is what Einstein, people have quoted him all over, that Einstein said it's the most powerful force in the universe is compounding interest. The reality of that is it's continuously compounding interest. And if you disrupt that compounding, you cost yourselves tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that really applies when you're making any kind of major purchase. So how should you pay for college? Well, let's talk about the main sources of money. There's the free money that we went over in the earlier part of this. There's the found money. This is what we specialize in, reducing or eliminating wealth transfers, opportunity costs, money, moving money to one place that actually silently hurts you in another. Borrowed money, the loans that you may borrow to pay interest, pay back over time, and ultimately save money that you've put together, like the 529s that many people have planned for college. The school selection is going to be the key in terms of how you're going to receive the free money and what combination those things are going to be in. You also have to understand that there's actually 7 factors that go into financial aid. So you can see here, those 7 are income of the parents, the age of the parents, the number of people in the family. We've got the number of students in college, as I mentioned before, that can actually give you discounts. Students' income and student assets count incredibly heavily. You need to be very, very careful and use extreme caution if you're draining future lifestyles money in order to pay for college, because it may not be available when you need it down the road. So you've got to review your cash flows. You've also got to borrow early to secure better rates if you're going to be borrowing. Before you make any decisions around college, you need to know 2 things. How much is it going to cost? That is the airplane pricing, but also critically important, what will be the impact of that money you're going to spend on other financial goals, such as retirement, such as other children that you have that are going to be going through college, and ultimately your own lifestyle that you need cash flow to afford. Now, the typical approach is that people are going to start by paying college out of their current savings. Build that 529, spend that money, it's good. But then when they find out that it's not enough, because the average 529 account is nowhere near close to the cost it actually needed to pay for college, then they're going to go look for opportunities to borrow through those public and private loans. Then They may go out and get a second job to add additional income, and ultimately they may look for help in completing the financial aid forms and data. Well, here's the thing. In this world, there's three types of people, and that spend their money in different ways. We have debtors. Debtors, these are the ones that everybody's trying to avoid, where you get trapped by borrowing money and paying interest over time. Ultimately, these individuals borrow and live below the zero line. You also now have your savers. Your savers are going to be the people that plan ahead. They put money away. You build up that 529. They ultimately build up an account, and when that account hits their goal, they spend it all. And they avoid interest. They don't like paying interest rate. But here's the interesting thing. The money that they save generally is going to not earn any interest. Or once they spend it, they lose all the future potential interest, and they end up back at the zero line. So now I'm going to talk to you about what the wealthy are doing and why it's helping to create greater wealth for them. A couple of years ago, there was a report that came out about how the billionaires don't pay any income tax. Now, this was perceived as a negative thing, but why? And what are they doing? And you can see here, I don't know what Elon Musk is doing at paying up 3.27%. He certainly hasn't figured out what the other three have paid because they're less than 1. So he's doing something wrong. But ultimately, compared to the rest of us, if you look at the amount of income reported against their wealth growth, they're barely paying anything. Why is that? Well, one reason is most of us earn an income, and we receive that income. We have to pay income taxes on it, which are generally at a higher rate. Billionaires obviously have assets. Those assets, if they sell them, are going to be taxed at capital gains, which is a lower rate to begin with. But the reality of this was that they weren't even selling those assets. Why is that? Because think of Jeff Bezos for a second. If he's going to have 10 to 15% growth on his Amazon stock per year, why would he sell that and stop getting that 10 to 15% when he could easily access money that's less expensive and make money on his money while he's borrowed it? Okay, so if he can borrow it 2 and he can make 10, he makes 8% profit per year. Most people want to avoid interest, but they ultimately lose it at the same time. The people that get this understand that keeping your money growing, keeping that compound interest growing into perpetuity is how your wealth continues to grow, and using it strategically and knowing when it makes sense to borrow and when it makes sense to pay cash can make the difference. That I can do the math for you on this, could lead up to easily $1 million more for your future. So if you are just avoiding one thing blindly or following a lot of the advice out there, you may be losing up to $1 million or more of your future. The question is, can you afford that? So ideally, you want to look at living above the zero line. You want to look at knowing when to borrow money today and take that money and use it strategically where you can make more and ultimately save for today and the future. And I'm going to show you exactly how this works. So if you have to pay for $30,000 for 1 year of college, okay, it's going to cost at 5%, $198 a month in monthly payment to pay that off over 20 years. Over 20 years, that's $17,000 in interest you're going to pay on that college loan. And I get it. You want to avoid it. But if you took that same $30,000 and kept it invested, over that same 20 years, you could make $69,000 in interest. That is a profit of $50,000. By the way, that is over 1 year of college paid for just by letting your money do what it needs to do. Why do we use the 6%? Because that is the worst 12-year rolling return of the S&P 500. That is the average S&P 500 after paying taxes. This is a number that is easily attainable over the long run in comparison to the cost of college. And this is a 1% spread. If you take a look at 4 years of college, $130,000, over that same 20 years, you could actually earn $300,000 on that money. Yes, you'd have to pay $75,000 borrowing it, but that's a $200,000 back in your pocket. That's college paid for. But understanding that, if you were to take that 130 and pay off everything right now and save paying $175,000 in interest, you cost yourself a future pool of money of $430,000. The question is, can you afford this? This is where it is incredibly important to understand where your money is and understand all the ways to pay that make sense. Not all of the situations are going to work for everybody, but ultimately, there's a lot of people out there that are going to get into retirement and say, I wish I had that money. And there are ways to structure it so that you do. If you can get that, we call this basically a retirement scholarship. But it's all about how you use your money and not lose it unknowingly or unnecessarily to inefficiencies. There's lots of places you would want to save that money if you're keeping it growing, like the 529 is a great place. But ideally, if you have tax efficiency, if you can not lose money so that money is available for you, that you could pay it off at any time, unstructured loans. Again, the key here is maintaining your money, liquidity, use, and control. Again, of the places that you can save for college, 529s, Coverdell's, prepaid tuition, UTMAs, UGMAs, stocks, mutual funds, IRAs, life insurance, annuities. There's lots of different places. All have pros and cons. Some are going to cost you more in taxes. Some will get you less scholarships on college. It all depends. But again, where your money is and how you structure it and understanding that can be the difference between a successful future and a successful college payment plan, and ultimately being better off in the long run. As I mentioned, 529s, very few people have saved enough in them, and ultimately they have lots of problems. We don't know where costs are going to be in the future. They're a unit tasker. You have to pull that money out and use them for college. If college payment structures change in the future, that could be an issue. We also know that pulling money out from a 529 from a grandparent can cost significantly against your ability to get financial aid because it raises your EFC. The 529 raises against the EFC. But most importantly, let's say you're getting 8 to 10% return on that 529 and you now liquidate it to pay for college. That 8 to 10% return that you were getting stops immediately. Compounding interest is gone. You just lost hundreds of thousands of dollars of your money for the future. So an ideal plan for paying for college is going to be a way where that money can continue to grow for you so that you have liquidity, use, and control and access to that money long down the road, not just spending it, because once it's gone forever. So to understand the college planning, there is the ABCs. We're going to reverse what we heard. Instead of using your money first, actually apply for financial aid first. Understand your ESC. Understand the cost of college. Make sure that you know how to get these scholarships. Become cash flow efficient. Know where your money is going. Know where that you're draining. Know where you can tighten up, because this will be one of the most expensive times in your life. You're going to potentially pay for the price of a sports car over the next 4 years. Credit opportunities, or maybe even a house. Credit opportunities, the next area you're going to be looking at. Figure out where you can borrow. Know where you can get the money. It doesn't mean you have to, but understand what money is available. Understand what it's going to cost. And then be able to know what options are available for you so that you can structure your financial situation best. And ultimately, the last resort is deplete your assets. Because once you do, as I mentioned before, money lost is lost forever. And most people find out too late that they can't get it back. So, key takeaways. You're going to finance everything you buy, whether you lose interest in the future or you don't pay or you pay interest to borrow. So understand it's all a financing. Make sure you leverage other people's money if it makes sense. Understand the spread. Use what the billionaires are doing. We can all do it at a different scale. They know how to make money. That's been proven. And ultimately, the traditional methods of paying for college may be actually costing you much more than you thought and much more than it could have. And what's next? Again, we need to make sure that we understand these tactics we went through fast. You understand how they apply to your life. We've got a testimonial here. I'm not going to get into it, but again, ultimately a question. And what this testimonial says to me is, what do I want to hear from a student? What do I want to hear from a family? I don't want to hear they picked a school because it was cheaper. I don't want to hear they picked a school because some list said it was the best. I want to hear a family say they picked a school because it offered a great career path or major in a field of study that fit that child. It offered support. It offered intimacy with the professors in the school, and organizations and friendships and lifelong benefits. And lastly, they offered them money, discounts, and they were affordable. Okay, and what does that mean with this family? That testimonial, they had 27,000 other reasons per year to like the work that we did. So ultimately, I want to recap. You need to understand there's a lot of things you need to know. It's very difficult to do this on your own. To do all the work it takes, it could take 200 hours, 10 to 20 hours per school on a list of 6 to 10 schools that you should be putting together. That's a lot of time people don't have. Understand the cost, understand the financing. And because of that, because there's so much you need to know, because there's so many questions that people have, because I ran through this so fast, and there's no way you were able to absorb this in this short period of time. It's taken lots of work on our end to understand this complex, and we have the rule book. We look at this, we study this. Offering to you a free conversation, 30 minutes, no obligations, no cost, an opportunity to talk about your situation, talk about questions you have, where you're at, what you need to do, and ultimately we can begin to understand or answer questions or formulate a plan that could help you. We also have something that is available for you. It's a customized college plan. Okay, this is a report. You can just get on, you can snap this QR code, or you can actually go onto our website and find this as well. But this is a free report that we offer to you. Actually, we offer a coupon code for you to get a discount. It's normally $67. There's a cost to us, but there's a coupon code. There's a discount, 20 off. But basically, in just about 5 minutes, you could get answers to some of the most important questions that we've talked about tonight. How much college could cost for you? Up to 3 colleges you might be looking at, what their net price could be, if you will qualify for grants or aid from them, how much you'll pay out of pocket, and other potential ways you could save costs, even a couple suggested schools that might fit in based on your situation. Again, go on, check out the report. It's an incredibly valuable and quick way to get some very powerful information. Also, for joining us, we've got some freebies. We've got information on how to write an essay if you're going to go get those private scholarships. Essays are important to be able to write. How to evaluate a financial aid reward letter. Sometimes you're going to get a good financial aid package from a school. Sometimes you're going to get a bad one. How would you know? You need to be able to evaluate those letters, because sometimes it makes sense to appeal. This is actually a major way people get more money, is to go back and appeal later. How to craft it. Ultimately, what are the 6 key areas that predict a child's success? If you're going to pay a lot of money, that degree shouldn't be a paperweight. We want to make sure that when your child gets in the school, it's the right school academically, financially, and socially. So all of the stuff that we talked about is a major value, over $1,000 in value. But as I said, the report itself is a discounted off $67. Everything else is free. So go get that information and have it, and may it be a start to help you. Have a conversation with us. You won't regret the time that you spend. And ultimately, you can get rid of this feeling of overwhelming. You can get rid of this feeling that you're not going to be able to afford college, that you won't be able to send your child to a great school. There are ways to do this if you're willing to do the right steps and do the work and get the right information, because ultimately this was going to give you peace of mind. What's one thing that families tell me that they, time and time again, once they've gone through this process, or once they've gotten information that they need and learn how this game is really played, they put their head on their pillow at night, late in the senior year. All of these other families are scrambling. Where am I going to get in? What am I going to pay? But they already know that peace of mind. They've done what they need to do. They've done everything they can. They know their child's going to a great place, and they're going to be able to afford it and have a future. It's an amazing feeling. Ultimately, here's the information for you. Again, I'm going to leave it up here. And with that, I want to say to all of you who have joined us tonight, thank you for taking the time to join us. I hope that you have found this information valuable. And wherever you are, because I know we've got a lot of people joining us virtually, wherever you are, wherever you may be, we know how important this is for you. We know that your child's future matters. And with our help, we hope it's achieved. Have a great night.
Boy, it was amazing watching that stream of audio.
Is it good?
I was listening to it with that earbud.
Super clear.
Super clear.
And it picked up with the Facebook Live and going the caption right. It's like, wow.
It came out well. It came out well.
I think you also, you're very clear.
Thank you.
Every word.
I felt like I was slurring less than I thought I was going to. I was like, I told Greg, I said, it's weird, no matter how tired I am, it's like when I get in it,
You're in that mode.
I had a gentleman that I was a manager at Ameriprise, and he was one of my trainees, and he's like, can you come to I got this prospective client, can you come? And I was at 103-degree temperature, sore throat, all blistered. I drove there, like, I had to drive to, like, north Denver, and I got outside the guy's house, and I was early, and I'm just like this, and he finally gets there, he's like, you ready? I'm like, I'm ready. Yeah, we'll do this. And I get in there, got an hour of it, because I couldn't even tell you were sick. I'm like, I get back to the car, and I'm just like, oh, fuck up.